Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Hi, it's Dr. Gemma, and I am recording this very late. This was actually due yesterday on September 4th, but September 4th was my 61st birthday. So I'm going to see if I can get a couple episodes in here pretty fast, back to back. So this is episode 43 about my road trip. The most important thing about my road trip is that it's over and I'm home. And there's a lot of information that feels very old in this episode because so much happened on the road trip. So it's been really great. And having said that, please remember, everything I mention is in the show notes, which you can find on our group on Ravelry or at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com. You can add yourself there as a listener and respond to my show notes, and I would love it if you did that. Okay, let's see what else we have going on here. Well, in the warm thanks department, I guess the obvious thing is thank you to the Knitmore girls for a lovely few days in San Jose, and that includes all the Knitmores, including Andrew and Genevieve and Rex and Sam, as well as Gigi and Jasmine. It was very interesting and a lot of fun, and thank you for hosting, and I had a great time buying all the Starbucks. I feel like I kept everybody stoned on caffeine for 4 days, and so it was really great, and I will get into more details about that in the blather. Meanwhile, what is on my hooks and needles? You are asking yourself, well, hooray, we have a finished object. I finished the really pretty socks. I was on sock number 2 and was probably not very far down the instep and realized that I had good time sitting with friends on the couches, various couches in various homes, just doing stockinette. I will tell you, there's nothing like knitting socks when you're hanging out with your buddies. So I did. I sat and I did that, and I finished my second sock and put the heel on it and put the toe on it. So that was extremely happy. I didn't even bother to take the wild lettuce shawl and Twin Faces vest. Heaven only knows where that is. But the temperature blanket is about a week behind. Now on my notes I say caught up and having a week of 70s in canary yellow. Yeah, when I started these notes. But right now we are a week behind. Let me change that on the notes because it looks a little bit silly. In the meantime, I sat today and did it and did like 4 rows talking to friends on Zoom as I do on Sunday mornings. So that was really good, but it's going to take some dedicated work to catch the temperature blanket up. We had one day that got into rouge that got over 101. So I'm looking forward to coming up onto that row for a change of pace. No fears, I love the temperature blanket and I will keep up with it. But in the excitement category, the hand-spun brick is at the divide for the sleeves. This is what I worked on most of the time up in San Jose, that it was on that lovely section where all you do is huge amounts of stockinette, increasing every few rows. And so I did, and I began yet another skein of the beautiful alpaca from my girls Jubilee and Summer, that is plied with one strand of a gradient silk, and I'm enjoying the way that looks. I overshot by a row or two, so I am presently tinking back a little bit, but on the whole it's been an extremely satisfying knit. I love the hand, I love the way it feels. Haven't had a chance to try it on for fit. We will do that after we do the sleeve divide. Let's see what else. Currently wearing, Jasmine gifted me a beautiful sweater. She had made a lavender sweater and started this years ago, so wasn't fitting her too well now. And it had a very broad V-neck. It was an interesting pattern. I have to look it up to see what the actual original was, but it came with a very broad V-neck. And so the V-neck actually went from almost the tip of my shoulder to the other tip of my shoulder. So Jasmine tore it out while we were there. And while defeating Boston Jen in Stash Dash, managed to put a shawl collar on it. So you can see that down in the notes when I talk about the road trip. When I stopped in Paso Robles one night, on the way home, it was cold and I got to whip out the sweater and wear it. So there is a picture of me in the bottom of the show notes wearing the beautiful lavender sweater with the freshly knit, there I am, shawl collar, which I really, really like. And apparently that shawl collar is off Tin Can Knits Gramps sweater. It's like a formula. And I need to make a Gramps, so there's many things I need to learn there. But in the meantime, I have, what I'm currently wearing. I'm actually wearing the lavender sweater. Or I was on, what night was that? The 2nd, September 2nd, whatever night that was. Let me think. Thursday night. And I will come back to that. Meanwhile, under my 2 favorite resources, of course, I always put the links for Lisa Souza yarns and for Webs for just general supplies. Well, the good news, Lisa and Rod Souza are home again. For those of you who've been following that, they were evacuated for the fires, the Caldor fire in sort of north central California. So the good news is the house and the studio are safe, and Lisa and Rod are home again, and it's wonderful. Hooray for them to know that they're safe and that's over. Having done it once or twice myself, mostly for smoke, I know how terrifying it is. So Lisa, Rod, we're really glad that this terrible week is over for you and your animals and you're all home again. And, parenting done right, that your family took you in and kept you safe. And thank goodness that ordeal is over for the nonce. Dizzy Blondes, I haven't really been working much. I'm still on the 3rd bobbin of the incredibly beautiful merino, the pin drafted merino from Morro Bay Fleece Works. My goodness, how I'd like to get that finished. But I'm not doing much in the spin department because I've been traveling. So that leads us right into a strategy. Boy, I'm booking right along here. Can you tell I had some iced tea for dinner? Strategy. Well, I'm winding up the whole mindfulness and distress tolerance aspect. And I want to come back to the 5 senses and mindfulness because, again, you teach part of the strategies in dialectical behavioral therapy, and you always come back to mindfulness and radical acceptance. We talk about the use of your 5 senses in so many ways in therapy, and this is one of the most complained about aspects of my job. People say to me all the time, are you telling me you get paid for this? And my medical doctor says this too, and I think this is what you guys do when you want to waste time, blah, blah, blah. No, sorry, wrong. True, I do want to make money for nothing. True, I may sometimes wish to waste time. It happens. I'm human. But the reality is, mental health is largely based on physicality. Physicality is not just exercise. It's also the use of your 5 senses. Most of the time when people are not being mindful, they're racing around in their head, unable to control their thinking. And so, we automatically start saying, I'm going to control my thinking. Well, you can't just walk away from it. Thought stopping is one of the obvious ways to do it. One of the really effective ways to thought stop is to engage your senses. Now, in the moment, as distress tolerance, I've talked about this. This is the S of the acronym ACCEPTS in distress tolerance, that when you're having a hard time distracting yourself from painful thought, you whip out your little bottle of essential oil and sniff it deeply a few times. You want to get a scent that really, really interests and excites you. Like I like to use grapefruit. Citrus will wake you up. Some things like spearmint will wake you up. Juniper will soothe you and put you to sleep. Lavender, which I happen to be allergic to, how unfair is that? But lavender will soothe you and calm you. Floral scents usually soothe you and calm you. Okay, so that's the distress tolerance. I'm upset, so I file my fingernails to stimulate touch and get myself focused on that. Or I sniff my essential oils, or I look at the photos on my phone, or I listen to soothing music or happy, upbeat music on my phone. I eat some Starburst fruit chews, or if you're diabetic, you eat some sugar-free breath mints or some sugar-free cough drops. Sure, that's 5 senses for distress tolerance. You give yourself a burst of sensory experience and it will distract you for a few minutes. But the 5 senses also come in to emotional regulation. You use your 5 senses to prevent distress, to prevent depression and anxiety. And so one of the things you do is you exercise routinely. You all know this. And this is why patients hate me, because I said, are you exercising? And nobody ever wants to fess up to the therapist. Look, the reality is when I started treating suicidal little kids years ago, I became a marathoner. Why? Because the thoughts hang on, and sometimes you had to go out and just run your butt off and sweat and hurt and ache and feel like I can't do this, because while you're thinking I can't do this, this is too hard, what you're not thinking about is the kids you know. It's an amazing way to distract yourself from exquisitely painful thinking. When we go in after a crisis, after a shooting or an airplane crash or a fire, one of the things we talk about is hold on to your exercise routines. If you're going to avoid getting post-traumatic stress disorder, you need to keep using your senses to distract you from your painful thoughts about what has happened to you. So yes, we're always encouraging people to get out and exercise after they've been through a serious, tragic event. When you have a serious problem, you want to keep your exercise routine. I was talking to a friend who's very burned out, and he's having all sorts of problems in his marriage. And I said, well, how are you handling it? And he said, well, the wife is mad at me because I'm going to the gym a lot. And I'm thinking, you guys need couples therapy, but the gym is actually a good idea because you just need to get into your senses sometimes. All right, so the other thing is you use your 5 senses, and that does promote mindfulness and meditation. For example, since you've been hearing about my rock climbing exploits, one of the great things about climbing is you have to be totally in the moment. You are hanging on a wall 30 feet off the ground with a belaying engine holding you up if you're me. There is no room for any other thought but the climbing. And I thought, when will I get tired of this? The answer is probably never, because it's such a good mindfulness exercise. You're so in the moment. It's very meditative. You're focused. And you're not thinking anything except where you're going to put your hand or your foot next. And are you going to make this? And are you strong enough? And yeah, sometimes I'll be climbing and I fall off the wall because I was doing this on my birthday. In fact, I just started trying the harder walls and I was doing pretty well, but I was kind of freaking out because I didn't believe I could do it. But there were a couple times where I reached for a hold and I realized my arm made the hold, but my legs, I was doing basically a squat and I would need to straighten up. And in that position on that wall, my legs said nope. And I just fell off the wall. Now I'm on a belaying rope. So no problem there. That's the whole point. But it was very interesting because you can't even fall off the wall without mindfulness. You have to work at not bashing into the wall all the way down. You're swinging like a pendulum and you have to make sure you're positioned so that your feet contact the wall every time you swing into it. So, you have this intense experience of focusing on the wall and realizing what your body is telling you. And if you don't make it up the wall, or even if you do, when you're belaying down, again, you have to stay focused to just not keep slapping the wall like 50 pounds of rotten potatoes in a bag wrapped in a belaying harness. But that's the advantage of exercise, is you're really focused. Let me tell you, as a marathoner, I am not a fast marathoner, but I'm out there for hours, and the focus is on what you have to do to make it through 26.2 miles. It's a wonderful, wonderful experience of being in your head for healthy reasons all day long and staying focused on the goal of getting to the medal. So the 5 senses, we use them for distress tolerance to distract ourselves, but we also use them for focus, for meditation, for preventing emotional overload. That working out is a form of mindfulness. It is a form of managing your emotions, and managing your emotions day to day will prevent stress, will reduce depression, will reduce anxiety. And let's be honest, will also manage physical illness and prevent physical illness. Most of my dad's family got diabetes. I knew I was going to get it, but they got it in their 30s and 40s. I got it in my late 50s. Why? A lifetime of working out. I want to tell you too, this is really important because if you have children, you have to start teaching this to your children. I'm so fortunate. My dad got diabetes when I was 9 years old, and we had a lot of discussions about, I was a thoughtful little kid, about how did this happen? I talked to his doctor, and it was always about, Jenny, you have to exercise. At 10 years old, no coincidence, I became a dedicated runner because it felt wonderful, and I couldn't understand why, but it felt so good to tire out my body. What you cannot say, well, my kids are very active. They have a lot of energy. Yes, and not only is that wonderful, but you have to teach them if they're able to. I realize, that this doesn't take account for all kids. But if your kids are healthy, you need to put them in physical activities because you need to teach them from their childhood that self-care physically, walking hard, exercising, sweating, this will prevent mental health problems. Every single pill we have for anxiety, every single pill we have for depression, there are research efforts that show why they are good for us. There are also research experiments that show why they are bad for us. The only exception to this rule is exercise. Exercise is enormous in reducing anxiety. It is enormous in preventing depression. And let's face it, if you're talking about kids, you're not talking about, they walk a lot. You're talking about they need to run, they need to sweat, and they need to learn to do this while they're young, and you need to model that this is going to be a lifetime habit. You need to get this habit into your kids. The use of your 5 senses is not only about stimulation in the moment to distract you and relieve distress. It is also about using your 5 senses to be outside, to be enjoying nature, to be hiking or running or working out in a new environment to give you change and stimulation mentally to prevent anxiety and depression and to strongly relieve them. So your 5 senses come back to just about everything you're going to do in mental health. Use of the 5 senses is involved in distress tolerance, but a lengthier use is involved in emotional self-maintenance and the prevention of mental illness and long-term chronic problems like anxiety and depression. And you want to start your kids on it as soon as you can. And yes, while you're at it, do it safely. We didn't let our son run marathons because your legs are not formed to do that until you're in your late teens. So you do need to research what your kids can do. But my kid was skating, playing hockey, and running from an early age. And these days he's also doing more physical stuff. He's doing more muscle development stuff like weights and chin-ups and push-ups. Okay, enough of that. Put a lid on it. Well, the Stanford Boot Camp is still going on for keto, and LCHF, that is low carb, high fiber, _Italian, has been posting recipes on Instagram. I have made some of them, and I have one of my favorites there. These are like little souffles. I have the recipe there. You need little ramekins that can go in the oven, but it's basically for 4 of them, 2 eggs, 1 teaspoon of swerve, but it has to be powdered, not the granulated. You can use stevia or any kind of powdered sweetener, but it must be powdered. That's important. The granulated will not work. You need 12 ounces of cream cheese, and you need the juice of an entire lemon. You're going to just basically mix that all together, and then you divide it into baking dishes in 4 portions, and into the oven it goes at 350 Fahrenheit or 175 Celsius for 20 minutes. You want these to be puffy and kind of light. These are nice. I've made various versions of this, and this is one of the really stable, nice versions. Little challenging where I live. We're at higher elevation, so we have to cook a little hotter, a little longer, but that's the standard recipe. I have to go a little more than that because of being at 4,000 feet. So what I'm saying is I can't exactly vouch for her recipe, because elevation means I have to cook things a little harder. But there you go. And the recipe is in the show notes at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com or on our Ravelry group. Oh, shoot, I'm amazed to tell you, since last I podcast, I did do 4 miles, almost 5, on the Fit Desk. But really, this week has been about climbing and traveling. And one of my goals in going to Northern California was to go to REI. That's really expensive inventions, is what I remember, to remember those abbreviations. But REI is actually a wonderful outdoor store. So I'm kind of joking about the name, but it's the only way to remember it, is really expensive inventions. And REI has a wonderful collection of climbing shoes. So my goal when I went north was to get a climbing harness, a waist harness instead of the rental one I use, and climbing shoes. And I really want to give a tip of the hat to Andrew Knitmore, who talked to me briefly but helpfully about the shoes. The most important thing he said was try on a lot of them. And he was right, because climbers tend to tell you your shoes have to hurt. And maybe they do if you're really versatile and you're working in the outdoors. Me, I'm on a belaying wall inside a gym. And the foot pain was really affecting me because I'm a runner. Climbing shoes pinch your toes together. To be a good runner, you have to spread your toes apart and keep your balance as you age. So I made up my mind that I was not going to keep abusing my feet in the rental shoes. And I went over to REI. Well, I actually did this on the way home. I stopped in Santa Barbara and got to REI. Had a very helpful young woman who was really nervous and anxious in front of me. And I felt awkward with her because, at my age, you're like, I know you're looking at me and you're thinking I'm old and I'm a lot heavier than you. And you're thinking, are you really climbing walls? Yes, I am. I'm a little self-conscious about my age. And, basically I have the body of a 60-year-old woman, not a 20-year-old. This makes buying some of the equipment challenging. For example, I don't fit in any of the women's equipment for shoes or harnesses that they have in the store. But that was okay. I ended up in a men's shoe. Now, the problem I had, because my feet are so long, which is a function of childbirth, hang around, girls, you'll find out. Your feet do lengthen and stretch with the weight. Anyway, my feet are so long that the shoes were just about 2 centimeters too short for me. So I ended up in a men's shoe, but the men's shoe, I have a very narrow ankle and heel. So the men's shoes were too loose. So I did the thing I did not wish to do. I bought lace-up shoes, which take forever to get unlaced and set up and laced up. However, it is the only way I could get the shoes to fit me. As a result, one of the most popular beginner models is a thing called the Tarantulace. Tarantula with a C at the end. Tarantulace. And it's by a company called La Sportiva. Well, the wonderful thing, when I was driving home, Santa Barbara was a really good rest stop anyway, so I pulled into REI there and tried on all millions of shoes, men's and women's, and ended up in the Tarantulace for men. And what was my size? I'm like half a centimeter too big for the women. I bought a women's harness. That didn't work, so that's going back. Didn't fit my son either. So when I got home, I was able to find a different variety of harness that came highly recommended. And it still is in the women's sizes, but I was able to order it in, I think I had to get an XL. My issue is not my waist. It's actually my thighs. That the harness gets you around the waist. It has to be at the widest part of your waist. But I have considerable distance between my waist, I'm high-waisted, and where I want the harness to fall on my thighs. So that was a little uncomfortable, and I fit into the one I bought, but just barely, and I felt like I should have a little more room on that. So I, anyway, went home and ordered a fresh one yesterday morning. Did that is slightly larger. But the good news is I did make it to REI, and I did get the shoes I want. Now, how did the shoes work? Astoundingly. I thought, how much difference can they make, really? I mean, I just won't have some of the discomfort because I would take off the shoes I was wearing. And my rental shoes are a very good company called Bootora. And Bootora emphasizes the pointed toe and your toes being squeezed in. And I can't do that. My toe box needs to be wider. So I ended up with La Sportivas, which were on sale for 25% off. Wasn't that a nice surprise? And I was really, really happy about that. because when I finally climbed the walls in my new shoes, I was so excited to do it, and it made the climbs 100% easier. The wall I'd been struggling with, which was still a 5.5, still a really easy wall, I'd been struggling with it, trying to reach the holds and everything. No, it was about the shoes. I went up that wall like straight up, no hesitation yesterday. It was astonishing. The shoes made all the difference. On my first wall, the easiest wall, it's got brown handholds if you look at my pictures. I've got one of me at the top of it in the show notes for this one. You can see it's a pretty easy wall. It's like a ladder, basically straight up. But there's 3 toe holds that are meant to be for your big toe to be inserted in them. They're shaped to stick your big toe into it. They're trying to teach you to use your big toe. Oh, let me tell you the difference it makes when your toes are not in screaming agony to do that. So yes, the right shoes made a huge difference. I don't think the harness is going to matter so much, but it'll be nice to be able to put my harness on like before I go to the gym and just walk in wearing it instead of having to kind of gear up every time I get into the gym with the harness and the shoes. So the good news, I did get in some fit desk bike riding, and I did get in some climbing on my birthday, and I got to REI and got the shoes. Thank you so much, Andrew, for your wisdom on that. I missed my chance. Andrew had offered to take me to a gym in San Jose. I so wish I had gone. Actually, I think it's in Santa Clara, called Planet Granite. And I had not spent enough time. If I had researched it the way I meant to, I would have gone in a heartbeat. And that's my one regret, was that I didn't get to go to Planet Granite with Andrew. Planet Granite does not have auto belay walls, but I'm sure they would have had enough beginning bouldering for me to do a little bit of that without feeling too unsafe. Now you have to realize my whole goal with climbing these walls is not to go high. I actually get fear of heights. My goal is just climb it as high as I feel good and then get off the wall, climb down or jump. And I need to work on jumping and landing on both feet. I jump very awkwardly, and I don't like to jump from very high up as a result. And we do have a class at my gym, Top Out, in Santa Clarita to learn this, but I haven't gone that far yet. But I really regret it because Planet Granite also had a lot of regular gym equipment I could have used if I didn't want to climb with Andrew. But I also could have taken a class on belaying, which is, you hold the rope while your friend climbs and then you help to lower them gently from a pulley, up top. I really regret not doing that. So thank you, Andrew, for kindly offering to help me with all of that. And maybe if I get up there again, I'll take you up on it when I'm a little more experienced. But I so regret not going to Planet Granite, and I'm so grateful to Andrew for helping me with the whole shoe issue. Okay, so moving on to the fluffy books. I did finish A Lady's Guide to Mischief and Murder, which is actually the 3rd book in the series. I was listening to it on Audible and reading the 2nd book, A Lady's Guide to Gossip and Murder. And I believe I finished that one too. It's been so long because I moved on to a new book, which is called Restoration by Rose Tremaine. I'm not actually sure I finished A Lady's Guide to Gossip and Murder. No, I didn't, actually. I think it was started listening to Restoration for something to do in the car and while knitting, and then got really involved in it. Restoration is exactly what it says. It's the life of a guy, Robert Murrayville, in the English Restoration. And he gets tangled up with the court of King Charles II and gets caught up in the charisma of the king. And it's a long and complex story. And Rose Tremaine, it turns out, was writing it because she was living through the 1980s in Great Britain, and she felt like under Margaret Thatcher, it was very much like the Restoration period in the 17th century, that everybody was trying to win influence at court, or with Thatcher in this case, and they were just into very materialistic, silly values. And rather than write a novel that would get too dated when the 80s passed and people forgot about them, Tremaine writes about the Restoration. You can't miss the comparisons. It's shockingly topical for where we are right now. You can imagine reading it, and it must be very much like being in Washington, D.C. in the Trump administration, trying to get famous and being starstruck by a guy who's not really that worthy of your attention, that sort of thing. Anyway, it turns out it's a little slow in the beginning, but it's really rippingly good, and it was really very interesting. So I have moved on to its sequel, and that is called Marivel, A Man of His Times, rather unimaginatively. Turns out Restoration was made into a movie with Robert Downey Jr. playing Marivel, the main character. I might look that up, and it was made into a play. I mean, it's actually had quite a life. The book itself was a finalist for the Booker Prize, I think. And anyway, so it's quite good and quite readable and very, very intriguing. And I really, really enjoyed it. I would love to teach it. It's one of those very, very literary type books that would be fun to teach in a class and to study the historical background at the same time. Okay, let me take a breath and get on to something I really like. Oh, well, first of all, I give you an update. I covered my Kodak Step printer a few weeks ago, and I just want to point out how much I like it. You can see a picture of one of the little printout pictures by my thumb. So you can sort of see the size. It's a 2x3 inch picture. And then to the left of that, there is a picture of the My Gallery page on the app. The app that goes with it is quite good and allows for a lot more editing. I have not taken advantage of it, and it's been a lot of fun. The only problem in the app, the framing can be very narrow, that a 2x3 inch output may not capture the full width of your actual original picture. So, yeah, sometimes they come out better than others. And you can see on the page, I actually show in the app, I show the top right corner you can see a picture of me climbing, bottom left corner, you can see a picture of me climbing the easiest rock trail. And then you can see the printout of it. And if you look, you can see it's been cropped slightly. But anyway, I wanted you to see the pictures, and also the picture on the right and also on the left, you have a picture of what the main page of the application looks like. And I'm liking it very, very much, and it's really fun to print these out and stick them in my journal. In the meantime, something I really like is Star Trek Discovery. This is on the Paramount Plus channel. And I'm a little tired of Star Trek stories that, of course, now that it's been bought out, they're just flooding the airwaves with Star Trek. There's Below Deck, and there's all sorts of other things. But Discovery is a very worthy venture in the series. It is very 21st century. That is, it is very dark. It is extremely violent and sadistic compared to the original Star Treks. That's one of my few complaints, is there are times I just have to turn it off. It is so cruel and so sadistic in places that I find it unbearable. And, you pay your money, you take your choice. I don't like that in movies. I'm the one who made myself watch all the Marvel movies during the pandemic, and there's hours of my life I can't get back. I mean, for all the fun, the violence, the sort of cartoon levels of violence in the Marvel movies, just for the sake of getting special effects. And in Star Trek, they're a lot smarter, and they're a lot more cruel, and there's a lot of sadomasochism. So, pay attention. You might want to watch it before you let your kids watch it. Having said that, okay, I totally love most of the cast. That they have finally lived up to Roddenberry's dream and integrated the cast, the human cast, okay? They've integrated some other weird ways, like they have a character who's basically an herbivore. And, it's interesting because somebody who was making this up said, we should really expand this in every direction. We've got wild carnivores and predators, the Klingons and the Romulans, in certain but not all of their incarnations. And they kind of said, what would it be like if we had somebody who was really, really gentle? And anyway, so, it's kind of interesting that they went in a lot of interesting directions with developing the characters. The human cast, though, is beautiful. They really, really went for integration. They're really trying. What a relief in so many ways. And here's the exciting thing. You notice it in the beginning because it makes you realize when you watch first few episodes, we're not used to this in American television. You know, we have a token black person, but oh no, they're really going for an integrated cast. And it's wonderful. And a lot of interesting things happen because of it. Number one, we get away from a lot of really embarrassing racial stereotypes. And number two, it means everybody is actually free to be a three-dimensional character. So when you have a racially integrated cast, you don't sit around doing things like we used to do as kids. Back in the 70s, we'd be watching the movie of the week on NBC, and the black character would come on, and we'd go, oh, he's the villain because he's black. Yes, we could actually do that in the 1970s. Isn't that horrifying? And it is wonderful because with a racially integrated cast, you actually have to have characterization. You can't just pick up cheap, embarrassing hints from skin color that are not realistic in any way. You actually have to, watch the show and think about the characters. So the really nice thing, too, is the first few episodes, you're like, wow, it's really integrated. And then what's even better is you stop thinking that. Like, you start to take it for granted. Talk about representation as everything. When you have a fully integrated cast, or a reasonably integrated cast, I don't know if I can call it fully. I don't know how you would qualify that. But the point is, when you have an integrated cast, you actually start to see that as normal. And that's a really, really wonderful thing. The lead character from the start is a woman, and a woman of color. And you remember the last time they tried that, Captain Janeway, where after 3 episodes they realized they didn't know how to write a woman in a leadership position, so it became about Janeway's sex life, and then we had to start seeing her in her sexy nightgowns, and when that didn't work, we had to bring in 6 of 9 and put her in a skin-tight... Turns out, she's a lovely actress, don't get me wrong, but let's face it, writing female characters who were not boobalicious didn't work well. I really like the main character, Michael Burnham. I don't know why they gave her a guy name, but that's cool. I like that the characters, can I say this? They're allowed to have culturally reasonable hair. They're not all walking around like, hi, I'm from this country, and strangely, I have a white middle-class haircut. It's really nice to see various types of hairstyles that are more culturally common in people besides the white people. They have an awkward moment. They try to do body acceptance. It's tough because these are people who have to be in a physically demanding job. So I think that's the one thing they kind of struggle with is the humans. There's one human character who's pudgy. And they kind of struggle with that. But I appreciate they're trying, and they do make clear that she is physically able to keep up. And may I say, as an overweight marathoner, that I got a lot of discrimination when I was running, not from other runners. Other runners were great with me. But I was overweight for a considerable part of my running career. And I was surprised because you would see body shaming when I was a therapist. You'd see it in our clinics from other clinicians. I remember watching this woman she had eating disorders to begin with, and she went after one of my supervisees who was overweight for no reason. My supervisee did nothing to prompt this about, I know what you're thinking. You think I'm anorexic. Well, at least I'm not fat and out of shape like you. At which point, I took a shoe off and threw it at her. The meeting was over and nobody was in the room but the 3 of us. I literally took off one of my running shoes that I was still wearing after a morning run. I hadn't had time to change shoes. And I threw it into her chest and said, come on, I'll give you my shoes. And she said, what? And I said, I'll trade shoes with you. I'm overweight. You want to talk about this? Okay, I'll see you in 26 miles. Keep talking. And it kind of gobsmacked her, but it made me so angry. First of all, this was a therapist doing to another therapist. But also, it is important that people who are overweight can keep up physically. There are limits on that. And I think that's where this character, it gets a little uncomfortable because, I don't know, there have to be limits. But if she's passing the Starfleet physicals, I'm A-okay because I've been that person. Minor glitches, the lead actress, she does a wonderful job. She tends to whisper a lot. Like when she doesn't know how to deliver a line, she'll whisper. You kind of get used to it. You kind of roll with it. But I really like that character. I really like the actress is stunningly beautiful. I just like so much about this. Again, the plots are good. There's ongoing themes and underlying plots that extend through more than one episode. But the physical violence and cruelty are hard to take. It is a good show. The plotting is good. But you have to decide how much of that you're going to take. But something I really like, Star Trek Discovery. We had a month of Paramount Plus, and so we watched it end to end. And there were a lot of things I'd read online about it in advance, and I thought, oh, it's probably, it's going to have problems. No, it's actually pretty good. But I can only take a little bit of it at a time because I just think the sadism gets very hard to take. Okay, on to the blather. Well, first of all, before I left for the birthday trip, my wonderful friend Carla sent a puzzle of an owl. This is a wooden puzzle by a company called Unidragon, and I'll probably put the link in for tomorrow's show notes for the birthday episode. But you can see a picture. We had so much fun with this. The first night of my vacation, I said, okay, what are we going to do? It's my vacation. I'm finishing patients. And we pulled out this puzzle on the dining room table. I spread out a table napkin, a cloth table napkin, to kind of give it a place to be held together. And my husband, my son, and I assembled it. It's called the Charming Owl. And it's a medium size. They do small, medium, and large puzzles. And it's a medium puzzle, so it's like 188 pieces. And the three of us had so much fun working on this together. It was really, really fun. So there you can see one of the Unidragon puzzles. And you can see the lid of the box becomes a picture that they give you two little cutout pieces to use to prop it up. And it becomes your model. Boy, did we have fun with this. Okay, on to the trip. Well, okay, so I thought I can't do a 6-hour drive, and I didn't want to fly because getting back and forth from the airport can be a bit of a problem, or has been on previous trips. So I decided I'll drive it. And you can see I have one of the maps. I just decided to get up to Bakersfield because I could get a free hotel room there. That's about 2 hours from home and about 4 hours from where I needed to be in San Jose. And from Bakersfield, you can take a pretty straight shot up the 5 up the Central Valley in the most desert part of the Central Valley, or you can go out to the coast, takes a little longer, and go up the 101, which is very beautiful and a lot less aggressive traffic. So I wasn't going to do this. I thought, no, it's a mistake. I'll leave Monday morning early and drive all day. But Sunday we were hanging out at home. I was doing laundry and just realized I needed to go. By about 2 o'clock, realized I need to get going, because I needed to get an oil change for my car. And I was going to go north to Palmdale to do that, because then I was going to continue north to Bakersfield. So I go up to Palmdale and realized I was missing my boys already, and said, well, we could all have dinner at Blaze Pizza, keto pizza crust, in Lancaster. So we did. The boys drove up to Lancaster while I was getting my oil change, which is north of where I got my oil change. We had a lovely dinner, and the real bonus points, I was catty corner to a CVS pharmacy, and there in my texts was a note from CVS saying, you could get a flu shot, And I said, good Lord, I could. And so I went and sat in the CVS parking lot and ordered my Blaze Pizza, and while it was cooking, I got my flu shot at CVS. It was just a walk up. It was excellent. It was also covered by my insurance, which they knew. So, I went in. Now, my only concern was, am I going to be fluish when I get up to San Jose to see my friends? Not really. A little problematic the first day. I felt a little draggy first day and a half. But I'm so glad I got my 2021 flu shot over. I have more medical stuff coming up in another week. The shingles vaccine and an eye dilation and diabetes check. So, again, the health stuff, the medical stuff really drags me down. And so just getting it done in little unexpected steps like this really, really helps. I'm also due for a COVID booster, so I'm hoping that will happen soon. So anyway, there I was, pizza with the boys and a flu shot. And, just went on to the CVS app and set up the appointment, and it was a walk-in. They made me wait like 10 minutes. So that was great. So then we went to Blaze, and after that, I felt so happy, and I drove up to Bakersfield, got there just after dark, stopped at Starbucks, let everybody know where I was, took that picture, and then went over to the Sheraton Four Points in Bakersfield and found out it was really cheap because they're doing all this renovation. I had noise in my room all night. So I woke up at 4:30 in the morning and gave up and got on the road to San Jose, which meant I arrived there quite early. I was there like 11:30 in the morning. And the good news was I decided not to have a distress ride, so I drove out to the coast on the 146, landed in Paso Robles and turned north, and stopped in a town called Soledad that is about an hour south of San Jose. Stopped at a Starbucks, had a snack, got iced tea, so I arrived at Nitmore Central without being too stressed and without being starving and dried out and everything else. So all I can say is I had a lovely time, did a lot of knitting, hung out a lot, bought a lot of Starbucks, got in a morning run. It was just ate a lot of good food, I must say, including oxtail stew and butter chicken. And we had Persian one night. We had kebabs. I didn't. I can't eat that. And barbecue chicken that I could eat. And there was some other kind of beef that was barbecue that did not have rice or breading in it. So I basically that night I ate protein, which was about what I needed, and drank a lot of liquid. And, all I can say is we just hung out and talked a lot. It was refreshing. It was a little strange, not the Nitmores, but being in the Bay Area, you forget where I live, like where I am in the farm area. These are all sort of people who want to have horses, and we're pretty well to do. But, the Bay Area is blindingly affluent these days. And it was really also strange to be in a suburb again. I had forgotten that, and now we lived in a suburb down here. We lived in Newhall, and we used to joke when we moved to Newhall. We called it like consumer paradise because we'd forgotten living in rural Washington State in the southeast. And then, on the farm, you kind of forget that the whole point of a suburb is for everything to be convenient and available. And it was, and it's, after you've been out on the desert farm a while, sometimes it's available to the point of being a little bit funny. But it sure was nice, I have to admit, to drive an 8/10 of a mile and get a Starbucks, instead of driving 20 minutes or, like grocery stores everywhere, everything you want within easy reach. But, the crowding and the traffic is, you take a few deep breaths and get used to it again. And of course, it's very, very educated up there. And where we are, it's not. Southern California is not known for its level of education. So it's really nice, the Bay Area. People can have intelligent discussions. Most people are college educated and can reasonably talk about issues. Even when you don't agree with them, you're always glad to listen because there's a lot of interesting things to be said. But I have to admit, it was a little bit trippy to be up there and in that environment again. And I don't know, it's very, very interesting. And so we had a great time. And you can see some pictures I left on, what morning was that? Thursday morning, the 2nd. And we went to a nice restaurant called Rock. And you can see a picture that they give you a hot volcanic rock and they give you a lump of meat. I had filet mignon. And you basically carve it up and cook it yourself on the rock. It's just kind of fun. And you can see my sides there, my keto sides, my broccoli and some roasted vegetables, which had carrot, but still, I knew it and I enjoyed it and I loved it. So that was really fun to go out there. And then we went and had a Starbucks. And you can see us all at the table at Rock. I'm not there. I'm taking the picture, actually. And behind the masks on the left, that's Gigi and the wonderful Kevin from 42nd Street Podcast. And the unconquerable Lexicom, the amazing crochet designer on the back right there. And, of course, Jasmine in the front, glamming a little bit for us there, which I learned how to take pictures from watching Jasmine have her picture taken. I always kind of enjoy watching how she poses for cameras because I had no idea how to do it till I met her, frankly. I always find this mildly amusing that it never occurred to me that people consciously pose for a camera. And I watched Jasmine and thought, wow, she's really unself-conscious. She just does it. And that really helped me a lot. So there you go. And then there's a picture of Lex drinking her giant Starbucks because I adore Lex. And I got to see her beautiful baby, Izzy, who's 2.5. Last time I saw her, she was in Lex's arms. And 2 years ago at Stitches West 2020, right before the quarantine shut us down. So I couldn't resist putting in a picture of Lex because I just adore her and I think she's so beautiful. And let's see what else I have there. So I left on the 2nd. And this time I realized I left too late to make it to Bakersfield. So I went down to Paso Robles. And since I have the app, I got a room at a Marriott down there. And it was really a nice way to transition back to my world, to have this sort of, I was used to, after a few days with the Knitmores, crowds and laughter and high spirits and a lot of activity and fun and kids. And so suddenly I'm driving down the 101 and it's quiet in the car. And I was kind of screwed up mentally by that. But I got to this beautiful room, as you can see, in Paso. And it was just a nice transition to just be, okay, you're in this room and you can quiet down and slow down a little bit. You can also see that after I got to Paso, I didn't run right to the hotel. I instead went to a restaurant, a Japanese place called Yanagi. And it was really nice. I mean, I found the hotel. It was right by the exit. And then I drove into downtown Paso. And Paso Robles is a quaint little town with a lot of outlying suburb, and realized this would be a nice place to retire. And it was a cool night because you're near the ocean, so you can see me wearing the beautiful lavender-colored sweater that Jasmine made with the lovely shawl collar, which I like ever so much more than the original V, which I liked in the first place. But it was nice to have that collar up around my neck. And so there's a picture of me in the lavender sweater, and you can see, I say I'm in Paso Robles for the night, and there's Yanagi, and there's my route. And it was just, well, that's actually, what is that? Is it my route from San Jose to Paso? No, it's actually, I think, my Bakersfield to San Jose route. Oh, well. And you can see what I had. This is sometimes called a dynamite, sometimes called a bomb or an AJ's bomb. It is really jalapeno, breaded and fried. A lot more breading than I'm used to. My place barely touches it with breading, but still, I just said, okay. And it's stuffed, theirs was stuffed with tuna sashimi in chunks and cream cheese. And I love this. And of course it's deep fried. And I just wish they hadn't overbreaded it, but still, it was delicious. And it was light enough. You can see there's not a huge serving because it was about 8 o'clock at night and I have to make sure I don't eat too close to bedtime. And I went back to my lovely hotel room, which you can see there the next morning, and just started writing in my journal again, which made me happy, and catching myself up and knitting. And it's where I did the count on the beautiful top-down hand-spun sweater and realized I've overshot by a row or two. So I started picking that out, and it just was a very, very happy night in Paso Robles. Called my beloved and talked to him at length. And rode down the freeway, actually playing nothing. I was surprised, but the silence, and kind of enjoyed that. And of course, the next morning I got up and I rode down the coast and I stopped in Buellton for a break for for iced tea, really. And then decided to go down to REI in Santa Barbara, realizing there's an REI in Santa Barbara. There's one in Oxnard. And then when you go inland from there, there's one in Northridge and there's one in Burbank. And I thought, okay, with 4 REIs in a row, surely I can find climbing shoes. And I struck it lucky on the very first REI. The other thing was I stopped in a dollar store. I got towards Santa Clarita and the boys were down there and I said, can we all go to dinner? And we went to one of our favorite sushi places down there. But I stopped in a dollar store and saw this. I stopped to get more pens for my journal, to be honest. There was this phone stand, and I had to put a picture of this in because on the internet, they keep posting on Instagram this $23 3D printed computer stand. And it has nothing to redeem it except, well, it looks kind of like the one in my picture, except I got that for $1 in the dollar store. I just wanted to say that because I have to admit I love, when you go into a dollar store, you always find one or two things. Like I also found dominoes, 24 pieces for $1. So I bought 2 of those so the boys and I could play some dominoes as well. So I just love the dollar store. I got my pens. I got my little phone stand, that I bought, the sort of molded plastic one I got at Joann's that rotates and all that. Yeah, it doesn't fit my iPhone really well except sideways. This one is a great fit for my iPhone SE. So there you go. If you need a good phone stand, it's to the dollar store. So I got home and Minerva bit me and bit me again and bit me again. On the other hand, Eleanor, our wonderful collie, acted like out of her mind with joy to see me, like, you came home, we thought you were dead, oh my God. So Eleanor couldn't stop throwing herself at me and Minerva couldn't stop biting me. So Minerva gets the last word today because this does have a happy ending. And I'll talk about her as the last word in the birthday episode. Because right before I left, it was International Dog Day. Now, we just had International Cat Day and International Black Cat Day. But I did post a picture of my 3 fur people for International Dog Day. So there's a lovely picture of Eleanor after a grooming and blankets in her crate, tolerating Minerva curled up against her side. Minerva, of course, got into the picture as an honorary dog. I missed my pets terrifically when I was in San Jose, but none of them are going to travel really happily, although they're certainly obedience trained well enough to travel reliably even without leashes. But, I miss them these days when I travel, I have to admit. I have a lot of friends with collies who travel with their dogs all the time. And I find myself thinking about that more and more because my dogs are reliable off-leash because I train my dogs to be reliable off-leash. And I pick breeds that are reliable off-leash. I like Western European sheep herding dogs because of that trait that they tend to have. Although I must say, you look at Eleanor, who's a rough collie originating in Scotland, and you look at Blankets, who's a German Shepherd originating in Germany, boy, you couldn't find 2 more different personalities, and they have very breed characteristic personalities. But I adore them because they travel well, because they go well off leash. If they get away from you, you can count on them to come back. However, I must say, both of them freak out when you put them in the car and travel too much with them. They are homebodies. And Minerva, of course, what can I say, cat. But there they are, celebrating Happy Dog Day. There they are in their picture, and I love that picture, so I put that in. So there we go. That is episode 43, The Great Road Trip. And I am home as I record this, and I'm hoping tomorrow to record episode 44, which is just about the birthday celebrations. So there won't be a whole lot of new developments in that one, I suspect. But I really appreciate your joining me. I really felt safe traveling, which surprised me. How it seemed very easy to travel. I did go masked the whole time. I was very grateful to have the flu shot because I felt like I was revving up my immune system by getting a flu shot. But I was very pleased that even in the very conservative areas that I drove through, people were masked pretty reliably. And so I was very, very happy about that. The Bay Area, of course, people are very conscientious because they're educated and intelligent, kind of selects for it. But it was really nice. I was relieved at how little the whole COVID thing interfered with the trip. I was very, very grateful that I felt safe. And of course, obviously the Knitmores, I felt very safe with them. So everything went very, very well. Big thanks also to Ray, who came over to Gigi's house and gave us exquisite massages on my last morning there? Or my second to last morning there. That really helped. I didn't realize how many knots I had learned to form while rock climbing. At any rate, what all this leads me to say is remember, get your vax, get your booster if you can, wear your mask, wash your hands, socially distance, because remember, the whole game plan here is to stay safe and take care of each other so I can talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.